I thought I would just speak for a couple of minutes about something that somebody, Nana, asked me yesterday about. During the ceremony, a lot of painful emotions came up, and she was asking me why this happened. And I spoke to her for a bit, but I thought, it would be good for everyone else to hear it as well. Some of you might know what I'm going to say, but I thought, it's interesting, and this comes from my own personal experience of having my own trauma and working through my stuff in various forms of therapy and working with different medicines. But we have trauma from various places. A lot of us have it from our childhood, when we came from abusive households, or maybe we were bullied at school, various things. And we're very, very sensitive when we're children. Some children more sensitive than others. So some children can have horrendous traumas and be totally fine. And other kids can have what seems like a less traumatic upbringing, and their life can be completely devastated. So it really is very, very individual. But what happens when we're children is we learn everything from our major caregivers, from our parents. And when the things that we learn are not completely functional, then we end up as dysfunctional adults. And we often don't know why. So for a long time with me, I had no idea why I was so unhappy and why I was the way I was. And it wasn't until I actually went into therapy for the first time that I realised where it all came from, and that you kind of put the pieces together and then it all sort of makes sense. But what happens for a lot of us is when we're children and we're chastised for essentially being ourselves, and that would be a child kind of being naughty or playing up, the message that the child gets from the adult, and if it's from a major caregiver, then that is like gospel to that child, because we see our parents as almost like God when we're that young. The message the child gets, it's not that you've done something wrong, it's that there's something wrong with you. And when it happens over and over again, then the child grows up with this feeling like there's something wrong with them, and they usually don't know what it is. It's completely unconscious, it's not cognitive. The child can't rationalise what's going on, they just absorb everything. And then you can end up as an adult with a mishmash of your parents' patterns and various traumas. And then what happens with that is we get, in my case I was a feeling avoidant. So just not able to feel my own feelings, because that's the messages I got from when I was a child. Not deliberately, but that's how it appeared. That's the way it manifested for me. And then as I started to heal, what happened was I started to get all the feelings coming up. So all the feelings that I hadn't felt, that I should have felt when I was young, they all come up when I've done therapy and with medicines. And sometimes the feelings can be very, very hard to get to, because they're so painful that we build walls around them to not let anybody in there. So it can be really difficult for a therapist to get in, to actually get to the trauma. And ultimately all that needs to happen is you need to feel the feeling and maybe cry or whatever it is, express it, feel that feeling, and then that layer of that feeling, it's gone, and it's been dealt with, because all the feelings want to be felt. But when we've built walls around to protect, then it's really hard to get to the feelings, and it takes a lot of work, and it can take years and years and years of therapy to be able to actually get to the feelings. When you use different medicines, what can happen is the walls kind of come down, and then a lot of the feelings all come up at once. So that's why it can feel quite overwhelming sometimes, and it can be extremely painful. And I remember one time in particular where I had the most emotionally painful experience during a ceremony, and it was just like literally just a wall of, call it emotional pain. I don't even know what it was. I don't know what the emotion was. It was like a mixture of emotions. And what I wanted to do was I just wanted to run away. I wanted to do anything to get rid of it. I wanted to get my phone out, go for a walk, use a substance to get rid of it. Anything was just not to feel this feeling. And then I've learned what you need to do is you just got to sit in it. You just sit in it and you just feel it, and you just let it wash over you. And then it passes. And when it passes, that's it. It's gone. And it is literally like you have layers of these stuck feelings. And as you do work, whether it's therapy or you work with medicines, is you'll get a layer will come up and you'll sit in it and you'll deal with that layer. and that's gone. And then another session or another ceremony later, you'll get another layer, and then another layer, and then it kind of goes on like that. And sometimes it can feel like it's never ending. You're just like, where's this all coming from? But we just have literally like layers and layers and layers of these unfelt feelings that have been pushed down. And then once they're felt, then they're dealt with. And that's really what it all boils down to. Most people's problems is because we just don't feel our feelings. And we live in a world now that's hyper-stimulated with technology and substances and ways not to feel. So the easiest thing to do is just to get your phone out when you start to feel something. And that might manifest as boredom, but actually you just don't want to feel what's happening right now. So, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody else. Phones are completely addictive, but we just get our phone out and play with it. And what you actually have to do is you just have to sit in whatever you're feeling, you just sit in it and you just feel it, even if it's boredom, whatever it is, and you just let it pass. And like the feeling to need to use substances, whether it's you craving whatever, some alcohol or cigarette or whatever, a lot of the time, what that is, this is what I think it is it's actually a feeling. There's a feeling that's coming up that you don't want to feel. And that manifests as an urge to an itch or a craving for something is actually a feeling coming up. And the craving kind of sits on top. And it's kind of your body, like, this is what your habit of not wanting to actually feel the feeling. You get a craving to go and eat or to smoke or do something, look at your phone, whatever that feeling is. And then you do it and then it just like pushes down the feeling. And then actually what we need to do is just not reach for the thing and then just let whatever it is come up. And something I'll add, I did something called Vipassana quite a long time ago. Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And on that retreat, you don't have any technology, nothing, no books. You just give everything to them, your phone, your laptop. And it's 10 days of silence in a group. You're in a group with other people. And there's 3 meditation sits each day. And it's a whole process, but you're not allowed to speak to anybody. And you're told also to try not to make eye contact with people as well. And you have nothing. Literally, the only thing I had was the pamphlet they give you when you come in. I must have read it like 100 times over the course of the 10 days. That was the only thing I had, was literally reading this pamphlet over and over again. But you're meant to have nothing. And then what I found was it was actually like doing a plant medicine. Like about halfway through, I started to get all this feelings coming up, very similar, almost the same. And that's because all the stimulation was taken away. So if you think about it, we've never spent not even a day since we've been born without any stimulation. And Vipassana was 10 days. And and then what happened was all the stuff comes up that was being pushed down, and it was exactly the same, felt exactly the same. So I won't go on for too much longer, but that's ultimately what's happening with these medicines. Why sometimes you do it and then it's just really, really unpleasant, and you just have to just sit in the feeling. But the thing to do is just feel the feeling, and then usually what happens is it will just pass, and then the rest of the night will be magical. So these medicines, they open you up. When they open you up, blocked feelings are going to come up, and then they just come up, and then they just need to be processed, and they pass through, and then they're gone, and then then it might be beautiful and ecstatic, and then another layer might come up. So I had this on the first night. It was quite difficult for me with the stress of coming and organising and everything, and tired, and I sat in quite a lot of unpleasant feelings at the beginning. But then it's like you know what to do. You just sit and you just feel it, and just let it wash over you. So I'll leave it there, and I don't know, unless anyone's got any questions or anything anyone would like to add or share.
Is it similar with thoughts?
With
just coming up like some thoughts that are like annoying,
Yeah.
Is it similar?
Yeah, I think so. And what can happen, I think for me, usually, well, no, not usually. Sometimes there's a feeling first and then a thought. So something will trigger me, will stress me out, and I'll get an anxious feeling, and then that feeling starts the process of puts me in a kind of fight or flight state, and then the thinking starts. But yeah, I'm sure it can be thoughts as well. But there's not a lot. Thoughts ultimately don't really mean anything anyway. So you can just try not to pay attention to them. But feelings are different. Feelings actually I think we should pay attention to. Thoughts don't need to be thought of, if you know what I mean. They don't need to be. I can't think of the right word, but you know what I'm saying. They don't need to be given awareness to, but feelings do, because feelings are like energy that gets stuck.
And what's on the other end of, like, for someone that's like massive feeling avoidant, what is on the other end of feeling your feelings? Because it seems like a lot of work and pain up front.
Yeah.
So what's on the other end?
Right. Well, this is a saying. It's like the good news is when you do the work is you get your feelings back. The bad news is you get your feelings back. So it's like, you get the good stuff, but then you've also, you just got to get used to all feelings. So what's on the other side? I would say being able to contain all feelings and stresses, like being able to tolerate them. So maybe you have a very small container for feelings before they really stress you out, and then you get activated and just go into an unpleasant state, and then the more you work with them, then your container gets bigger. So the feelings still come up, but they don't overwhelm you.
You feel safe. You feel safe.
Yeah. Exactly. That's it. That's right. That's what it's about. Feeling the feelings and knowing that actually you're kind of grounded and safe, rather than going up into the head. Again, if you have PTSD, that's quite a common thing. Is you have a maladaptive response to stress. Feeling will come, something, and I have this. It will trigger me. Something triggers me, and then I get the anxious feeling, and I go right into my head, and then without even realizing it, I'm like massively in my head. And then I need to, now I've learned how to bring myself out of it, doing something called somatic experiencing, which is like a therapy for PTSD. And it's like retraining your body how to come out of activation. Yeah. Because we need activation, right? We need to be able to go into fight or flight because it will save your life in a crisis. But the body can regulate itself and come out of it. And when you have PTSD, you just don't come out of it. You just get stuck in it all the time. So you can retrain yourself to come out of it.
Do you want to explain the difference between complex PTSD? Because I would have never thought I had PTSD.
Yeah.
Complex PTSD versus normal PTSD.
Yeah. So type 1 PTSD is the sort of type that most people have heard of and what they'd think of if you said PTSD, which is what soldiers get in a war. It's one event, one situation where, for example, like a soldier's had a situation in a war where maybe a grenade went off and his body didn't process the trauma from that and it's stuck. Now, whenever he hears a loud bang, like a car backfires, suddenly he's back in the war zone, he can smell gasoline. That's like a kind of classic example of type 1 PTSD, and that's quite easy to fix. If you work with a good therapist, they can help you. They take you back into the memory of that one event and they allow the body to then shake off or do whatever it needs to do to release the trauma. Type 2 is where you have that, but over and over and over again, but maybe smaller, not quite such big traumas, but a lot of smaller ones over and over and over again for years. That's usually what happens with childhood abuse, is because it's happening through the developing years. And then you end up with a load of triggers and you don't know what they are. So type 1 PTSD tends to be flashbacks that are visual and quite visceral, maybe auditory. So for example, the soldier, he hears the loud bang and then suddenly he sees a flashing light and he can smell gasoline. When you have type 2 PTSD, the flashbacks are emotional flashbacks. So you'll have a trigger, something will happen, usually involving another person, and then the flashback is an emotional overreaction to what's happening. That's an emotional trigger. And it could be something like you fly off the handle and get angry, or you get really anxious when somebody criticizes you, or whatever it is, but it's a massive overreaction to quite a small thing. And you can have a whole web of them. And that's why type 2 PTSD is difficult to treat.
Thank you.